Welcome to your weekly Leadership Principle by Coach AJ and the mentor team at Martin County PAL. At Martin County PAL, our goal is not discipline. It is growth. We meet youth where they are and help them develop into healthy, productive leaders for the future. This week, the conversation focused on self-worth. And I'll tell you right now, if you ask a room full of tough, guarded teenagers to rate their self-esteem on a scale of 1 to 10, the answer is going to completely change the way you speak to your child tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
Because sitting in that room, watching these kids, this wasn't some, fluffy, feel-good conversation about emotions. It was a gritty, incredibly uncomfortable look at how human beings actually calculate their own value.
Yeah, and if you're tuning into this deep dive today, I really want to pull you directly inside that room with us to feel those palpable shifts in energy that we felt firsthand. Because we are going to look under the hood at how a child's internal code gets written. But more importantly, we're going to uncover how the environment you're cultivating in your own home is actively programming that sense of self-worth. It's a mirror we all have to look into, whether we really want to or not.
It really is. So let's bring you right into the room to set the scene. When the youth first filed through the doors, they had that classic defensive posture you see in so many teenagers.
Oh, yeah. Shoulders hunched, hoods pulled up.
Exactly. Eyes darting around, totally avoiding eye contact. And Coach AJ started them off by handing out the National PL Youth Survey. He was pacing the room, walking them through the document, asking them to rate various statements on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 meaning you completely disagree, 10 meaning you completely agree.
And at first, it felt like pretty standard intake paperwork, right?
Yeah.
The statements were straightforward, like, I feel connected to my community, or I have a positive outlook on my future. You just heard the shuffling of papers and the scratching of pens.
Right, but then AJ hit question number 6. I have strong self-esteem. And he paused to clarify the stakes. He told them, listen, a 10 means you have ultimate armor-proof self-esteem. Nothing the world throws at you shakes your confidence.
Like, totally bulletproof.
Exactly. And a 1 means you are in the trenches, really struggling. So he gives them a moment to fill it out. Then he stops pacing, looks around at the tables, and just asks, did anybody in here put a 10?
And the silence that fell over the room in that exact second, it gives me chills just recalling it.
Out of dozens of young, capable kids, not a single hand went up. Nobody moved. You could visually see the tough masks dropping. It was this profound, raw realization that underneath all the bravado and the slang and the posturing, absolutely nobody felt truly secure in who they were.
And talk about wild timing, right? Right as we are sitting in the uncomfortable weight of that realization, the clock hits exactly 6:22, and Coach AJ abruptly stops the entire session. He leads the group outside into the dark to watch the Artemis II rocket launch.
Which, I have to admit, totally confused me at first. I was standing out there in the cool night air thinking, wait, why are we breaking the momentum? We just had this massive breakthrough with the survey.
Yeah, it felt like an interruption.
It did, but then it clicked. You're standing in the dark, watching this multi-billion-dollar marvel of engineering tear through the atmosphere toward the moon. It's the ultimate physical display of human capability. But inside the building, you have kids whose internal programming won't even let them get off the launch pad.
Wow.
The contrast was just staggering.
It really was. And that is exactly the tension Coach Bob leaned into the second we got back inside. Many of the kids in this program are there because they got into some sort of trouble. They walk in expecting an authority figure to just lecture them.
Right.
But Bullitt stood up at the front of the room and completely flipped the script. He told them point blank, we are not the police. We are not your teachers. We're a bunch of misfits. He openly admitted that many of the mentors were misfits who got into the exact same trouble at their age.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you there because I have to push back on that approach.
Okay.
When I heard Bob say that, my immediate thought was, isn't that incredibly dangerous? If you are an authority figure trying to establish order, and you tell a room full of troubled teenagers, hey, I'm a misfit who broke the rules just like you, aren't you just undermining your own authority? Doesn't that invite complete chaos?
You would certainly assume it invites chaos. I get that. But from a developmental psychology standpoint, teenagers, especially guarded, defiant ones, they are hyper-tuned to hypocrisy.
Oh, for sure.
If you walk into a room pretending you are a perfect, flawless adult, their brains immediately tune you out. By openly admitting his own flaws, Bob bypassed their neurological defense mechanisms. He told them, "You are serving your punishment, but I promise you this is the easiest punishment you will ever face because the real world gets ugly fast."
All right.
He demanded their respect, but he earned it by proving he had been in the trenches with them. You could physically see the kids lean forward after that.
And once he had their attention, Coach AJ took the floor and went straight after the root of the problem: negative self-talk. He asked the room who had doubted themselves just that week, who looked in the mirror and said, "I can't do it," or "I'm not worth it."
Yeah.
Then he dropped this quote: "If you think you can, you're right.
Yeah.
And if you think you can't, you're right."
Which, I mean, it sounds like a simple motivational poster you'd see in a guidance counselor's office, but AJ was hitting on a core cognitive truth. How you perceive things directionally determines the biological outcome.
Exactly.
If your internal narrative is that you aren't good enough, your brain subconsciously looks for evidence in your environment to prove that narrative true, while filtering out any evidence to the contrary.
To prove it to them, they did this "who are you" exercise.
Yeah.
AJ had them write down "I am" statements. Some kids ripped right through it, throwing out words like smart, musically inclined, sporadic, authentic. But then AJ flipped the exercise. He asked which ones were the most difficult to write down.
And that's when a young man named Sam spoke up. His voice was almost shaking. He said the absolute hardest things for him to write were, "I am accepted and I am worthy."
Man.
Other kids quietly chimed in, saying it was nearly impossible to write honest or brave.
Let's dig into that for a second. Why is the word accepted such a massive mountain for a teenager to climb? Because as an adult, if I don't feel accepted at a dinner party, I just leave. I don't really care. But for these kids in the room, it felt like a matter of life and death.
Because biologically speaking, it is a matter of survival. During adolescence, the brain's social reward systems go into absolute overdrive. Historically, for an early human, being rejected from the tribe meant literal death. You couldn't survive alone.
They'd be cast out.
Fast forward to today, and a teenager's brain processes social rejection using the exact same neural pathways that process physical pain. So when Sam says he struggles to feel accepted, he isn't just talking about hurt feelings. His nervous system is constantly scanning his environment for the life-threatening danger of isolation.
That makes what happened next so critical. Because the mentors didn't let them wallow in that pain. They challenged them on how value was actually assigned in the real world. AJ brought up this brilliant analogy. He asked the room to picture a basic $10 white t-shirt hanging on a rack at Walmart.
Oh, this is great.
Then he asked, if you take that exact same t-shirt, change absolutely nothing about the fabric, and put it on a mannequin in a high-end Beverly Hills boutique, what happens?
And the kids yelled out immediately, "It sells for way more."
Right.
Which is a perfect illustration of a cognitive bias known as heuristic anchoring. We rely heavily on environmental cues to determine the value of something. The shirt itself didn't change at all, but the environment it was placed in and the price tag attached to it shifted the perceived value entirely.
Then one of the mentors chimed in with a follow-up that absolutely floored me. He looked at the kids and said, if you hold an object in your hand that you know for a fact is worth $100, and someone walks up and offers you a single dollar for it, do you take the deal? The kids practically laughed at him. They said, no way, get out of here.
Yeah.
And the mentor shot right back, then why do you accept dollar behavior from other people?
That phrase, dollar behavior, it shifted the energy in the room instantly.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate again here. Isn't that a bit simplistic? Telling a kid don't accept dollar behavior is a great soundbite, but when they leave PLL and go back to school tomorrow, they are still facing the same toxic friend groups and the same bullies. A clever metaphor doesn't block a cruel text message.
You're absolutely right. The metaphor alone doesn't solve the external problem.
Yeah.
But it radically shifts the internal locus of control. And that is exactly why Coach AJ brought in the Eleanor Roosevelt quote right after. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. AJ really drilled down on that word consent.
Meaning you are actively allowing it.
Precisely. Feeling less than isn't a passive weather event that just happens to you. It is a transaction. When you stay in a clearance rack relationship or tolerate a friend who constantly puts you down, you are actively consenting to that valuation. You're willfully handing over the $100 item for a single buck.
That concept transitions perfectly into what Coach Bob did next. Bob walks while he talks, and he delivered a speech that had me frozen in my seat. He told these teenagers that every single one of them was a first-place finisher. Biologically, they won the ultimate impossible race just to be born, swimming past hundreds of millions of competitors.
But he followed that up with a very harsh mechanical truth about the human brain. He explained that when we are born, the brain is essentially the world's most powerful yet entirely unprogrammed computer. It has immense processing power, but absolutely no software.
Right.
The software gets written exclusively by what you hear with your own two ears.
Bob didn't hold anything back. He shared his own deeply personal story. He talked about being a battered kid, physically beaten by his dad, relentlessly bullied in the hallways at school. He was told he was chubby, clumsy, not smart, worthless.
It was so heavy.
And here is the terrifying reality about an unprogrammed computer. It doesn't judge the moral quality of the data, it just runs the code it receives. So his young brain took all those negative inputs, stored them as facts, and he became the exact person they told him he was.
Until he finally found a mentor who helped him identify that malware and rewrite his code. To make this tangible for the youth, Bob handed out physical tokens to everyone in the room, little guardian angel coins. He challenged every single teenager to become the active guardian of their own mind for 30 days, to catch the bad code before it installs.
And to back up why that works, another mentor shared the most fascinating psychological study I have heard in a long time. Researchers tested young kids by giving them a water bottle with a top that deliberately didn't fit. It was an impossible, frustrating task.
Oh, the Batman study.
Yes. The baseline group of kids gave up and quit in about 5 minutes. The second group, the researchers told them, "We want you to tackle this task like you are Batman." That group lasted 25 minutes before quitting.
Which highlights a concept in psychology known as the alter ego effect, or psychological distancing. By stepping into a completely different persona, you distance yourself from your own immediate frustration and insecurity.
But here is the kicker. The third group, they didn't just tell them to act like Batman, they gave them an actual physical Batman costume to wear.
Wow.
That group worked on the impossible task for 3 straight hours. Think about that. 3 hours, all because they had a physical mechanism that allowed them to believe they were capable. AJ's advice to the kids was profound. Put on the mask. When you are terrified, when your self-doubt is deafening, borrow the confidence of an alter ego.
It ties beautifully back to the Artemis rocket we watched outside. A massive rocket doesn't break orbit just because the astronauts think positive thoughts. It requires a massive engineered propulsion system to overcome the sheer force of gravity. For these kids, putting on the mask is their engineered propulsion system. It is the thrust they need to escape the heavy gravity of their own ingrained self-doubt.
Hearing all this unfold in the room, it actually made me take a really hard look at my own home. Because if Bob is right about the brain being an unprogrammed computer, it begs a very uncomfortable question for anyone listening to this deep dive right now. Who is programming your child's computer today?
It is a heavy mirror to hold up.
Yeah.
As parents, we often think we are simply reacting to our kids' behavior. But in reality, our reactions are writing their base code.
Let me frame it this way, because I was thinking about this on the drive home. Think of your teenager's baseline self-worth as a smartphone operating system. As a parent, you are the primary developer of that OS. If you continuously download malware into their system, calling them lazy, difficult, or a troublemaker, every single time you get frustrated, you are corrupting the software.
Right.
You cannot be surprised when their battery drains and their apps crash the second they step out into the real world. They're just running the malware you installed.
And the neurological science of how that malware gets installed is crucial to understand here. Coach AJ made a brilliant observation during the session. He asked the kids to recall the scariest, most highly anxious situation they have ever faced. He noted that our brains record every single microscopic detail of high anxiety moments. You remember the smell of the room, the exact words spoken, the look on a person's face?
Yeah.
But a calm, normal Tuesday evening, you forget it instantly.
Why does the brain do that? It seems like a cruel trick to only remember the trauma and forget the peace.
Well, it's actually a deeply ingrained evolutionary survival mechanism. When anxiety spikes, your body floods with cortisol and your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, goes into absolute overdrive. It cements that highly emotional moment into your long-term memory so you can recognize and avoid that threat in the future. The brain always prioritizes trauma over tranquility just to keep you alive.
So translate that into a normal family dynamic. What happens neurologically when a parent loses their temper over a messy room or a bad grade?
When you blow up at your child, when you scream out of pure frustration, their anxiety spikes. Their amygdala lights up like a siren. And because of that, their brain cements that exact negative interaction into their permanent memory. Your momentary lapse of patience, the harsh words you throw out when you're stressed out of your mind, that becomes their permanent defining identity. Your bad moment becomes their permanent price tag.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You can't plant a seed in a cement driveway and scream at it to grow. And you can't put a $100 price tag on your kid in private, telling them they're special, but then treat them like a $1 clearance item the second you're stressed.
Exactly.
They don't listen to the words you say when things are calm. They absorb the code you write when their cortisol is spiking. If you treat them like a burden when the pressure is on, you are giving them the exact blueprint to consent to inferior treatment everywhere else in their lives.
So, how do we reverse engineer this? How do we take the profound lessons from the PL session and actually apply them in your living room this week? The mentors ended the night by focusing the kids on adding value to others. The core idea is that doing good makes it neurologically impossible to feel bad about yourself.
It is essentially a self-worth hack. But how does a parent actively model that?
It starts with auditing your own code. This week, let your child physically see you adding value to someone else. And just as importantly, let them hear you speak positively about your own self-worth. We all have a bad habit of making self-deprecating jokes, or complaining about our weight, or venting about our perceived failures in front of our kids. We have to stop doing that immediately.
That's a great point.
If you want them to guard their minds, you have to show them what it looks like to fiercely guard your own.
I will take it one step further. I want to give you a direct mission to execute with your child this week. Sit down with them and ask them about their price tag. Use the exact vocabulary from the session. Ask them, are you accepting dollar behavior from anyone at school right now? Are your friends treating you like a clearance item?
And when they answer, help them identify where they might be unconsciously giving their consent to feel inferior.
Exactly. Tell them about the Batman study. Explain the alter ego effect to them. When they are facing a terrifying presentation or standing up to a toxic friend, give them explicit permission to put on the mask. Tell them they don't have to feel brave to act brave. They just need to borrow the cape for a few minutes to get the engine firing.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over tonight. We have talked deeply about programming, consent, and value. During the session, Coach Bob mentioned a staggering statistic. 80% of our self-esteem is put there by someone else. 80%.
Which only leaves 20% for the kid to figure out on their own.
Right. So I want you to take a hard look in the mirror tonight and ask yourself, of that 80% that your child relies on from the outside world, what percentage is coming directly from your mouth?
Thank you for taking a few minutes to invest in your child's growth.
If this message resonated with you, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, like or comment on this episode, and share it with other parents who care about raising strong, capable young leaders.
If you would like to learn more about Martin County PL or are interested in supporting or partnering with our program, please reach out. This work only happens because of people who believe in meeting youth where they are and helping them grow into who they can become.
We appreciate you being part of that mission.